Labor Day weekend, Saturday, September 1st, 1951. The train pulled into the station, and the passengers rushed out to the boats, waiting to whisk them out to the bountiful fishing grounds of the Atlantic Ocean. The Montauk community had teamed up with the Long Island Railroad to run express trains from New York City all the way out to the hamlet of Montauk on the far eastern tip of Long Island to allow eager city fishermen to get out on the water for a day of fishing. These trains were very popular and became known as the Fisherman's Special. One of the boats waiting for these city fishermen was named the Pelican. Owned by Captain Eddie Carroll and constructed in 1940, Pelican was a 42-foot fishing vessel powered by twin 100-horsepower Chrysler engines, and at 14 gross tons, she was not subject to United States Coast Guard safety regulations or any annual inspections. At 8 a.m., Pelican, loaded down with 62 passengers and a crew of 2, left the dock, everyone eager and excited to begin their Labor Day weekend with a day of fishing. The fleet of fishing boats left Fort Pond Bay and fanned out to their favorite fishing spots. Captain Carroll's favorite spot was Frisbee's Bank, southwest of Montauk Point. Weather forecasts called for a line of approaching storms and changing winds becoming stronger by the afternoon, but for now, the morning was sunny and the seas were calm. As they made the journey out to the fishing grounds, the boat experienced some engine problems, but they were still able to make the 11-mile trip in around 2 hours. And once they arrived and began fishing, all problems were forgotten, as poles immediately began to bend and the fish began to bite. The fishing was so good that everyone ignored the changes in the weather. From the time the Pelican arrived at Frisbee Bank at about 10 a.m., the wind had been gradually increasing in intensity and had been veering around to the east-northeast. Some of the other fishing boat captains stated that they had heard small craft warnings over their radios from a fishing trawler several miles off Block Island, and the worsening weather situation was being discussed by other fishing vessels. Captain Carroll took notice of the change in the weather, but the fishing was so good that he was convinced by the passengers to stay out just a bit longer. Finally, at about 10:45, one of the passengers, noticing the violent rocking of the boat and the strong gust of wind, told Captain Carroll that he thought they should head for port. Captain Carroll agreed. As he fired up the engines to make the return trip, the one that had been giving him problems, the starboard engine, wouldn't start. So he had to make the journey back on one engine only. This caused him to cover only 6 miles in 2.5 hours. The wind growing stronger and the seas rougher the entire time. At 2 p.m., the Pelican finally rounded Montauk Point, just 1 mile north of the Montauk Lighthouse. By this time, the strong northeast wind was blowing at around 25 to 30 miles an hour, churning up a foaming sea with waves easily cresting at greater than 6 feet. She changed course to round the point and head west towards the harbor, bringing the wind and sea first onto the starboard bow and then onto the starboard beam and quarter, causing her to roll heavily to port. Due to the heavy wind and spray on the starboard rail, the passengers all favored the port side, causing the Pelican's port gunwale to roll under the water. So when the first large wave, possibly 12 feet or more, hit the starboard side, the boat went into a sharp roll. And before she could recover, a second, even larger wave hit, causing the Pelican to roll completely over, spilling everyone aboard into the turbulent sea. Everyone except 10 who were trapped inside the now submerged cabin. Many of the passengers could not swim, and in their panic and desperation clung to others and pulled them underwater. Captain Carroll attempted to help people cling to the hull of the boat, but the waves tossing the boat eventually sapped his strength and he too slipped beneath the waves. Several fishing boats immediately responded and began attempting to rescue passengers. Radio calls went out, and a huge rescue effort from other Montauk captains allowed 18 people to be saved. A U.S. Coast Guard picket boat that responded approximately 1 hour later was only able to rescue 1 passenger, found clinging to the Pelican's hull. As the rescue boats began to trickle into the nearest harbor at Lake Montauk, the extent of the tragedy began to become clear. The Montauk Yacht Club ballroom was converted to a triage center, and Duryea's ice house served as a temporary morgue for the bodies that were being recovered. Of the 64 people on the Pelican, 45, including Captain Carroll, lost their lives. 18 of those were lost at sea and never found. Following the disaster, a U.S. Coast Guard investigation was conducted. It found that, by any standard, the Pelican was overloaded, that the capsizing can be attributed to no other cause than the presence on board of a human, consequently a shift in cargo above the waterline, and weather conditions which probably caused the vessel to list and roll to port until stability was completely lost, and that other contributing causes such as wind and sea conditions, failure to distribute passenger weight to the best advantage, and uncertain engine operation were purely accessory and would have had no serious effect if the primary governing cause, overloading, had not existed. They concluded that more stringent safety regulations were necessary for such boats. The Pelican disaster led to new safety regulations, as stipulated in a bill known as H.R. 7952, an act to require the inspection and certification of certain vessels carrying passengers. This bill was signed into law by President Eisenhower on May 10, 1956.